Have you ever wondered what humans did in the darkness before electricity, when the setting sun truly meant the end of day? When the familiar world vanished into shadows and the sky revealed its cosmic theater? The following content presents historical information and religious practices based on archaeological evidence and anthropological research. While I strive for accuracy, some interpretations remain debated among scholars. Welcome to Wisdom Files, where we explore the hidden depths of human history and spirituality. If you find value in these journeys through time, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us continue creating this content, and you'll be notified whenever we release new episodes exploring humanity's most fascinating spiritual questions. When we think about our earliest ancestors, we tend to focus on daytime activities, hunting, gathering, toolmaking. But for early humans, nighttime wasn't just downtime. It was terrifying, magical, and deeply mysterious. Imagine this: you're a human living 100,000 years ago. The sun sets. And unlike us with our light switches and smartphones, you're facing genuine darkness. Predators with better night vision than yours are active. You can hear them, but you can't see them. The temperature drops dramatically. Your only weapon against this overwhelming darkness? Fire. Archaeological evidence from sites across Africa and Eurasia shows that control of fire dates back at least 400,000 years, with some evidence suggesting it might go back nearly a million years. But fire wasn't just practical, it was transformative for our relationship with night. Around the flickering flames, our ancestors found something profound: community. The hearth became the first sacred space. When excavating ancient campsites, archaeologists often find evidence that people gathered in circles around central fires. These weren't just random seating arrangements, they were our first temples, our first churches, our first sacred spaces. I visited a cave in France a few years ago where they found evidence of fires from nearly 30,000 years ago. Standing there, I could almost feel the presence of those ancient people huddled together, their faces illuminated by dancing flames, sharing stories that would eventually become our first myths and religions. Speaking of stories, let's talk about what might be humanity's oldest nighttime tradition: storytelling. Before written language, before temples and formal priesthoods, we had oral traditions passed down around evening fires. These weren't just entertainment, they were essential cultural, educational, and yes, religious experiences. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest written story we have, existed as oral tradition long before it was ever written down. The same is true for the Vedas in India, for the stories that would become the Hebrew Bible, for the tales that would be collected into the Iliad and Odyssey. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer societies have observed that storytelling almost always happens at night. There's something about darkness that enhances our capacity for imagination and wonder. The Jew/Hoansi people of southern Africa traditionally tell their most sacred stories only after sunset. The Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime stories are typically shared during evening gatherings. Night storytelling served multiple purposes. It transmitted practical knowledge disguised as entertainment. It reinforced social bonds and cultural identity. And perhaps most importantly for our focus today, it explained the unexplainable, the great mysteries of existence that have always preoccupied human minds. These nighttime stories became the foundation for organized religion. The characters in these tales, heroes, tricksters, creators, destroyers, eventually evolved into gods and goddesses, spirits, and demons. The lessons became moral codes. The cosmological explanations became doctrine. But while our ancestors were telling stories around their fires, they were also looking up. And what they saw above them was perhaps the greatest religious inspiration of all: the night sky. Without light pollution, ancient humans experienced stars in a way most of us never will. Thousands upon thousands of stars, planets, meteors, and the glowing band of the Milky Way created a spectacular celestial theater every clear night. Almost every ancient culture developed sophisticated astronomies, and these weren't separate from religion, they were integral to it. The movements of celestial bodies weren't just scientific curiosities, they were divine messages, cosmic patterns that reflected earthly events. Take Stonehenge, built between 300 to 2000 BCE. We now know it functions as a remarkably accurate astronomical calendar. But it wasn't built by scientists in our modern sense, it was built by priest astronomers who saw the movements of the sun and moon as sacred events requiring monumental architecture to track and honor. Or look at the Mayan observatory at Chichen Itza, precisely aligned with Venus's movements, a planet the Maya associated with their fearsome god Kukulkan. The ancient Egyptians aligned their pyramids and temples with incredible precision to specific stars, particularly Sirius, whose annual reappearance signaled the life-giving Nile floods. In Mesopotamia, priests spent nights atop ziggurats, those massive step temples, observing the stars and planets to divine the will of the gods. They believed celestial events directly influenced earthly affairs, a belief system that eventually developed into both astronomy and astrology. And this wasn't just happening in the famous civilizations we all know about. Recent archaeological work in North America has revealed that sites like Cahokia contained astronomical markers. In the Pacific, Polynesian navigators used their intimate knowledge of the night sky to travel thousands of miles across open ocean, a knowledge embedded in religious practice and oral tradition. The night sky wasn't just beautiful to ancient peoples, it was alive with meaning, divine presence, and cosmic order. By observing and recording celestial cycles, they weren't just doing science, they were participating in sacred communion with the universe. Of course, not all religious activity happened in the open under the stars. Many of the most profound spiritual experiences were deliberately scheduled for nighttime, hidden away from ordinary life. The ancient Greeks celebrated the Eleusinian mysteries, secret initiation rituals dedicated to Demeter and Persephone, primarily at night. These ceremonies promised participants knowledge of the afterlife and blessed immortality. Similarly, the Roman mystery cult of Mithras always met in underground temples lit only by torches, recreating the primordial cave where their god slew the sacred bull. In ancient Egypt, some of the most important temple rituals took place at night. Priests would perform elaborate ceremonies in near total darkness, tending to divine statues believed to house the actual spirits of the gods. These nighttime rituals were considered so sacred that ordinary Egyptians were forbidden from witnessing them. The night also provided cover for religious practices that challenged the established order. Early Christians often met at night, partly to avoid persecution but also because darkness created the perfect environment for their candlelit communion rituals. The catacombs beneath Rome still show evidence of these nighttime gatherings, simple altars, oil lamps, and religious graffiti. Shamanic practices across cultures typically involved nighttime ceremonies. From Siberia to the Amazon, shamans would enter trance states after sunset, often aided by darkness, drumming, and sometimes psychoactive plants. These nocturnal journeys allowed them to communicate with spirits, heal the sick, and maintain cosmic balance. The pattern is clear: night created ideal conditions for humanity's most profound religious experiences. Darkness enhanced the impact of fire, starlight, and carefully controlled ritual lighting. The separation from daily activities created sacred time. And the natural human tendency toward heightened suggestibility at night made spiritual experiences more intense and memorable. And speaking of altered states, we can't talk about ancient nighttime without discussing dreams and their enormous religious significance. Before modern neuroscience explained dreaming as brain activity during sleep, dreams were universally understood as spiritual experiences, messages from gods, visits to other realms, or prophetic visions. Ancient Egyptians believed that during sleep, the Ba, one aspect of the soul, could leave the body and travel to other worlds. They developed elaborate dream incubation rituals where people would sleep in temples hoping for divine messages through dreams. The Greeks had similar practices. The cult of Asclepius, god of healing, maintained dream temples called Asclepia where the sick would sleep overnight. They believed that during sleep, the god or his sacred snakes would either heal them directly or provide dreams revealing the cure for their ailments. In the Hebrew Bible, significant dreams shape the narrative repeatedly. Think of Jacob's ladder, Joseph's prophetic dreams in Egypt, or Solomon receiving divine wisdom during sleep. The ancient Mesopotamians maintained detailed dream books to interpret various symbols that might appear during sleep. Native American vision quests often involved fasting and sleeping alone in sacred places, awaiting nighttime visions that would provide spiritual guidance. In ancient China, dream divination was a sophisticated practice going back to the Zhou dynasty and beyond. These weren't superstitions to ancient people. Dreams represented a different kind of knowing, a direct channel to divine wisdom unavailable during waking hours. Night wasn't just for physical rest, it was for spiritual communion through the medium of dreams. Now, I should mention something that ancient night was particularly good for: sacred sexuality. Many ancient cultures had religious traditions that included ritual sex, often performed at night. In Mesopotamia, the sacred marriage ritual or hieros gamos involved priestesses, and sometimes kings, embodying deities in ritual sexual union, typically performed at night. These ceremonies weren't pornographic as modern people might imagine. They were solemn religious acts believed to ensure fertility of the land and prosperity for the community. Fertility cults across the ancient world often conducted their most important rituals at night. From the worship of Dionysus in Greece to Bacchanalia in Rome, nocturnal fertility festivals combined religious devotion, intoxication, music, and sometimes sexual elements in ways that would shock later religious sensibilities. The Hindu tradition preserved elements of sacred sexuality in tantric practices, many traditionally performed at night. The union of masculine and feminine principles was seen as echoing cosmic creation itself, not mere physical pleasure but profound spiritual practice. I'm not mentioning this to be sensational, but because we can't honestly discuss ancient religion without acknowledging the central place fertility and sexuality held. Night provided privacy for these sacred acts that celebrated life's creation and continuation. Of course, not all nighttime religious activity was about celebration or communion with the divine. Much of it was protective, designed to ward off the very real and perceived dangers darkness brought. Virtually every ancient culture developed specific prayers, rituals, and protective objects against nighttime threats. Egyptian headrests were carved with images of Bes, the protective deity who fought off night demons. Romans placed protective phallic symbols called fascinum at entryways to guard against evil spirits believed to be more active after dark. In ancient China, night watchmen would beat gongs and drums not just to mark time but to scare away malevolent spirits. Medieval Europe continued this practice with night watchmen calling out the hours partly to reassure people that human protection was present in the darkness. Prayers before sleep are among humanity's oldest religious practices. The ancient Mesopotamians had specific incantations against night demons like Lamashtu who threatened sleepers. Early Jewish evening prayers included pleas for divine protection during the vulnerable hours of darkness. Even architectural features we take for granted had protective spiritual functions. Chimney designs in many cultures incorporated anti-witch features. Windowsills were often carved with protective symbols. Thresholds were considered spiritually significant boundaries that needed special protection at night. These weren't just superstitions to ancient people. In a world without reliable lighting, where predators and human enemies could attack under cover of darkness, these spiritual protections provided essential psychological comfort. They transformed terrifying vulnerability into manageable risk through ritual and belief. As civilizations grew more complex, night became more than just a fearful time requiring protection, it became sacred time deliberately chosen for specific religious purposes. Many ancient festivals took place partially or entirely at night. The Jewish Passover traditionally begins after sunset. The ancient Roman Saturnalia included nighttime feasting and role reversal. Diwali, the Hindu festival of lights, centers on nighttime illumination, symbolizing the triumph of light over darkness. Winter solstice celebrations across northern cultures focused on the longest night of the year. From Germanic Yule to Roman Sol Invictus festivals, these ceremonies acknowledged the profound darkness while celebrating the sun's eventual return. The timing wasn't coincidental, these cultures recognized the spiritual power of the year's darkest point. In many traditions, night vigils marked important religious transitions. Early Christians held Easter vigils from Saturday night into Sunday morning, symbolically waiting through darkness for resurrection. Similar night watches preceded major feast days in various traditions. Monasticism in both Eastern and Western traditions incorporated nighttime prayer as especially potent. The Christian monastic practice of praying the night office, matins and lauds, at midnight or pre-dawn hours reflects the ancient belief that prayers offered in night stillness had special spiritual power. So what can we learn from all this? Why does it matter what ancient humans did at night? I think understanding our ancestors' relationship with darkness helps us recognize what we've lost in our constantly illuminated modern world. Electric lighting has transformed human existence in countless positive ways, but it has also disconnected us from rhythms and experiences that shaped human spirituality for thousands of generations. The ancient night was a time of vulnerability and wonder, of community gathering and solitary contemplation, of star worship and fire tending. It was when our most enduring stories were first told, when our oldest rituals took shape, when our fundamental questions about existence found their first expressions. Perhaps most importantly, night taught our ancestors something essential about the human condition: that darkness and light, known and unknown, visible and invisible, exist in necessary balance. This understanding shaped religious traditions across cultures and continues to resonate in our spiritual lives today. Next time you're outside on a clear night, try to imagine experiencing it as your ancestors did, without artificial light, without scientific explanation, without the buffer of modern convenience. Look up at the same stars they saw, feel the same darkness surrounding you, and perhaps you'll connect, just for a moment, with that ancient sacred night that shaped our religious consciousness. Thanks for joining me on this journey through ancient darkness. If you enjoyed this exploration, please hit that like button, subscribe for more religious history content, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, may you find wisdom in both light and darkness.